You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-hosts Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing well. Another great Tuesday night. We are inching closer. We have five weeks until the start of college football, and that makes it about 6 weeks or so until the start of the NFL season. So, it's great time, right? Getting into draft season. We got some more player breakdowns coming for you. Kind of about a month left or so until kids are back in school. So you got that little bit of summertime left, but it's good, man. I can't complain. How are y'all?
I'm good. It's still talking season in the NFL right now. Talking season and like weird player retirement news season. I don't know if you guys saw Phillip Rivers retired, even though he retired last year.
Right.
Chargers put together a little video.
Even though he hasn't played in forever. Now I'm retired.
Yeah, now he's retired. And then actually the one that kind of surprised me today that I saw was Tyrann Mathieu retiring.
The Honey Badger.
Yeah, calling it an NFL career. That guy was fun to watch. Here's why I don't like the Honey Badger retiring, because I remember watching him in college. And now he's old enough to have retired from the NFL. That can't be. I'm still just hardly removed from college myself. How can he be old enough to retire from the NFL if he and I are about the same age? Which I'm actually probably much older than he is. But that was hard. That a hard one to swallow. Like, oh man, I remember watching this kid in college. Now he's retired from the NFL, and this sucks. Everything sucks.
Mike Williams also announced his retirement. So that was, I'm not gonna say it was super surprising, but it was a little surprising. I really thought that it'd be Mike Williams and Ladd McConkey and Trey Harris. Is that right? Lining up for the Chargers here to start the season. So hopefully he's healthy and he's feeling okay. Maybe he just didn't, maybe he just didn't love the game anymore, right? Whatever it is, congratulations on your career in the NFL, and best of luck to you and Mr. Honey Badger in your next endeavors.
There was another big name too, and I'm gonna say the wrong name. But there was a tight end who retired too. Jimmy Graham is the name that's coming to my mind, but it wasn't Jimmy Graham, was it?
I don't remember seeing anything, but I have so many draft notifications going on in my leagues. It's possible I missed a.
Oh, Jimmy Graham is retiring with the Saints. Okay, I thought that's what I saw. Okay, so Jimmy Graham is retiring with the Saints.
There you go.
Which is, I'm not sure it has a huge impact, but wasn't he supposed to come back and play with the Dolphins? Wasn't that what was going on there, or am I just lack of sleep brain?
Darren Waller, who's coming back with the Dolphins.
That's who it was. Thank you. I'm dumb. But we've established that. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, we've established
just
that.
Confused. There's a lot of names.
Because Julio Jones was one. Patrick Peterson, another. Zach Martin. Tyron Smith. Teron Armstead. Ryan Ramczyk. Jason Peters.
Ramczyk wasn't that old, was he?
No, I don't believe so. But
because didn't the Broncos have the chance to? And I'm trying to think which draft this was, where they had the opportunity to draft Ramczyk and they made some boneheaded draft.
2017 was looks like when he.
Hey, an 8-year career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he has a
Dude was born in 94.
I didn't need to know that.
Right.
Yeah, 31 and retired.
That's what
nice.
I'm. See, even 31 doesn't make me feel old. Like I don't think about my number necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But the birth year always hurts.
Right.
Like it's like, oh, he's did his 8 years, he's retired, he's 31, 32, whatever. Like that doesn't register that, I'm still, quite a bit older. It's the birth year going.
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you
that hurts.
A quick aside here. There's I work with some younger people, which is nice. They help keep me young. But one of the people I work with, she's got a blanket that's got like everything that was from her birth year, from the year of her birth. So like the number one song, the number one movie, this was the price of gas, this was the price of eggs. And you look at it and you're like, oh, that's really neat. And then you start to realize like, I was a sophomore in high school when you were born, and I don't appreciate you flaunting that everywhere. So if you could hide your blanket or take it home or get a new one, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't need to be reminded of my mortality while I'm trying to get my job done.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Yep. The joys of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mason Crosby also in that retirement list.
Another one that like
I keep waiting to see Adam Vinatieri, or not Adam Vinatieri, Justin Tucker pop up on the retirement list.
Right.
I mean, forcefully, I think.
I mean, if a team's willing to pay for him to sit out 10 games,
I don't think there is. Not for a kicker.
Here's the interesting thought that I've always had around that. Right when they're on a suspension, but they're not signed. Is it really suspension if they're not signed?
Yeah, they have to be signed, I think.
Yeah, they have to be signed. Yeah, exactly.
So that suspension doesn't start until he is signed and missing games. I'm fairly certain.
So,
which I'm okay with. Like, I do feel like that's the appropriate way to handle any suspension. Like, you can choose to be without work and go do whatever, and that's all fine and good. But if you're going to participate in this greater organization, there is a penalty associated with that.
So, yep. So yeah, interesting. Just kind of the some of the news that has shaken down and come out here over the last little bit, and certainly some of those retirements kind of popping up. And it was like, what? Like, he retired? I thought he had been retired, right? Like the Phillip Rivers one was the one that really kind of stood out there.
Yeah, that one made me laugh.
I wonder if he did that because of
he wants to be a first. I think he wants to be a first
path to the Hall of Fame, and so he did it in a year where there was no other marketable
5 years later,
quarterback.
Who else is going to be an eligible quarterback in 5 years? Right? Like no other quarterback of note has retired, right?
Yeah. And maybe he did. Maybe he thought that he was going to, get a call last year and it's like, okay, we'll see how camp goes. And as these teams start to get into camp, like no one's even talking to him. And so it's just going, yeah, okay, this is done. Like, let me collect my pension for years served and call it good.
I think there was a thought that he might get a call late, right? If one of these teams that needed a veteran presence suffered an injury at the quarterback position, like he could have been available, I think, for a late season / playoff push, but it didn't work out. But I hope he gets in on the first ballot because that would make me sound really, really smart.
Right.
I do believe a few years ago.
Yes, you've been.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and play that one. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
Yeah, it could. The pathway is there, I believe. I believe the pathway is there, but it will be tough.
Time will tell.
Speaking of quarterbacks, this was another interesting thing that I saw, and I can't, again, for the life of me, remember where I saw it. This is not an original thought. But as you guys are well aware, the Browns have 40 quarterbacks on the roster right now. And
Did that few?
There are teams out there who could use a veteran presence at quarterback or a young quarterback. But I think the overwhelming thought is that one of those Browns quarterbacks, probably Joe Flacco, ends up in Minnesota and is a backup / insurance policy against JJ McCarthy's rookie, in air quotes, year. And I don't think that's a terrible idea. And I don't think you'd have to give up a lot to get Joe Flacco to come join your organization to have an insurance policy for a rookie.
So I see your Joe Flacco from the Browns.
Go ahead.
And I would counter you if you're going to take a veteran backup to be able to come in and stopgap. Jameis Winston.
So
from New York.
I agree. And same concept.
Same thing, right? There's four guys that you can name on their, quarterback depth chart. Same thing with Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, if Russ goes down, why not turn it over to Dart?
Yeah, see what you got, right? You got to see what you got.
Yeah, for Russ's faults, he's not an injury-prone quarterback. He's durable and he's tough. He does play through nicks and bruises and everything else. So I don't expect Russ to be missing time. So why carry JMO if you're New York, having Tommy DeVito and Jackson Dart on there also? Because you're not going to keep all of them. You're not. Like maybe you release DeVito hoping you can get him back to the practice squad, but I don't even know if that one flies.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That will be an interesting thing just to see how it plays out and who teams might be looking at. Because I agree, having a backup who can throw the ball really well isn't a bad thing to protect your offensive investments.
No, and we know that, at least from the reports that I've read and the actions that they've made, we know that Kirk Cousins is going to still be in Atlanta, right? I think Atlanta said we'd rather Kirk Cousins do nothing on our bench than go do something against us. So we'd rather pay him $10 million to not play than to have him be the one who goes out and beats them.
How convinced are you, though, that Michael Penix has really taken that job?
I'm not. I just think that I think this Penix push is coming from not the coaching staff, right? This feels like a front office push. Right? Why do you go and draft this guy if you you made this deal to bring Kirk Cousins in, you signed him to this bonkers contract, and then you draft a quarterback in the first round? Like what is going on there? So that's either
Arthur
a front
Blank
office
has never been accused of being the smartest owner in the NFL.
Well,
it's either a front office or a top office, right? Like that's where this is coming from.
But I was watching the quarterback show, this past week as well, right?
Yeah.
And kind of watching through that and kind of seeing some things unraveled that didn't necessarily make its way out into a lot of the reports, the mainstream on how banged up Cousins was during that last bit. Like I'm not necessarily convinced that Atlanta is ready just to go, okay, Penix is the guy, Cousins are back up and we're going through. I've had a bit of a turnaround thought on that, thinking that Cousins, it's now Cousins' job again to lose going into camp.
I mean, it very well could be. And again, they picked up his option. They didn't have to, but Atlanta did. So, like, right. I'm not sure what the dynamic is down there. I think if you know anything, and if you've watched that quarterback show or you've seen, how Kirk Cousins operates, like the dude is a consummate professional. He's going to show up. He's going to give you his everything. He's going to be prepared to play a football game. regardless if he's the backup or if he's the starter. I think he learned some lessons when he was in Washington, right? Like, I think that served him well throughout his career. But I don't think you could go wrong in Atlanta with the choices that you've got. But I do think, like, I think they're going to give Penix a shot. And then if things start to go south, that you could see Kirk Cousins back in there. And I don't know how quickly, though. Like, that's what's so weird about this. Like, none of it makes sense.
Right. I'm kind of more the opposite. I think that we're going to see Kirk Cousins to start the season and see what that looks like. Right. And it's easier to go to the rookie if things aren't working out with Kirk than to go the other way, right? Because there's a whole confidence thing, all of that gets played into it. Very few rookies do what Bryce Young did, where you're the starter, you get benched in the middle of the season, they bring you back and you're now performing better. I don't know that we haven't seen that narrative play out well in the past when that happens. Typically, once the team benches the young quarterback, that's kind of the end of that. Whereas at least at this point, right, you're coming off of a season where at the tail end of that, Kirk was very banged up, had shoulder, elbow issues, all of that, and kind of seemingly after that injury, the turnover proneness started, the wasn't able to drive the ball down the field, build that narrative type of thing. So it wouldn't be surprising to me to see Kirk Cousins out there week 1 starting for the Falcons. And I know that's a lot of folks would, especially with ADP.
Still couldn't find Kyle Pitts. I can't drive the ball down the field, and I still don't know who Kyle Pitts is.
Right. But yeah, I just had that interesting thought because Kirk Cousins is 35 ADP right now for QBs, and Michael Penix is now starting to inch up into right around top 20.
I mean, Kirk could be a bargain, and he was always a bargain when he was a starter. Like, he was always a bargain even when he was starting, he was a bargain.
Right. So
I got one more thing because I know we got to get into rankings, and this is going to affect one of the guys that we were talking about tonight. The settlement had been reached on the Rashee Rice case.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just starting to kind of get a feel for, kind of what the pros, if you will, are doing in like the high stakes leagues and tournaments for the regular season. But we still don't know what the actual suspension is going to look like. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6? And it gets negotiated down to 4. Like, we still have not seen a ruling from the NFL front office. I'm hoping we get that for everybody here relatively soon. That way we can speak to it quickly and kind of understand what we're getting into. But at least the settlement has been reached. So step 1 is done. And now we're waiting to understand what the true fantasy implications are. But I think we all understand that since the settlement, again, has been reached, there is going to be time lost for Rashee Rice this season.
Same with Jordan Addison. Also had his legal issues wrapped up there, and so it'll be interesting, right?
Yeah, his is weird. Like 30 days. He has to serve 30 days in prison over the next like 3 years or something like that. But they're allowing him just to like come in on like a Friday night or something, and come in on Friday night, and then you can leave Saturday.
I've seen some stuff like that before, and yeah, it's a unique punishment for sure, but it is very interesting. Back to Rashee Rice, who the Chiefs, they opened up camp today, and he was featured heavily in the 7-on-7 period. If you read one of the reports that's out there. I think you're right, Kevin. I think it's 6 handed out by the NFL, negotiated down to 4, which is what I think the NFL wants anyways. But everybody gets to save face, right? Everybody gets to have their cake and eat it too in this. But there's no way I see him with fewer than 4 games. Like I don't see him with fewer than 4.
Yeah, 3, 4. I think kind of right in that range. So, but it'll be interesting to see. And it's one of those. I'm a little surprised that we didn't see that pop off kind of right after that other news happened. A couple of days later. Seems like they probably would have already had their investigation complete and we're just waiting for everything else to wrap up. So
yeah, and I was mistaken. He's not on the list for tonight.
No, he's not. But Jordan Addison is.
And Jordan Addison is. Rashee Rice should be. But maybe next week when we get to him, that means we'll have more information and we can speak to it a bit more accurately instead of just pontificating on what the NFL is going to do, because we'll never be right.
Right. So
that's a dumb game to play if you're trying to figure out what the NFL and NFLPA is trying to do.
Right.
Now, just spend money at the strip club.
It's a fool's errand.
Sure. All righty. Well, are we ready to start jumping in and breaking down some ADPs tonight?
Let's do it.
All righty. We're going to roll through wide receivers 21 through 40 as far as kind of best ball ADP and kind of seeing our thoughts around that. We're going to go ahead and start with number 40 on the list, and that is Jakobi Meyers. Last year, Jakobi Meyers, 87 receptions, 129 targets, 1,027 yards, 4 touchdowns, an additional 2 rushes for 23 yards on the ground. Thoughts on Jakobi Meyers?
I see no reason why Jakobi Meyers shouldn't have a similar season and maybe slightly better if the touchdowns come back in line. He is clearly the top wide receiver option for Las Vegas. Obviously, you have Brock Bowers there doing his thing. The new toy, Ashton Genty. We understand that Pete Carroll's going to want to run the ball, but they do still have to throw the ball. And so when it comes down to it, I do think he'll have more than his fair share of targets. I could see him with, 130, 135, maybe even 140 targets, just because I'm not sure where else they're going to come from. There in Vegas. So I don't mind Jakobi Meyers this late. Like I targeting him quite often, actually, because I think I can get good value out of this. And instead of wide receiver 40, I think he could absolutely return, mid to late 20s wide receiver value. And if he goes on a heater for touchdowns and he jumps, but if he's able to get up to 1,100 yards, has 7 or 8 touchdowns, and 92 receptions, I think we're looking at someone who's sitting at the back end of the 20s. So if you're able to grab him up at wide receiver 40 right here, I think there's a tremendous amount of upside for Jakobi Meyers, and I think he has a really safe floor due to the lack of options in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, you mentioned Pete wants to run the ball, but Chip Kelly is also in charge of this offense. So like they're gonna go, right? Like there's gonna be plenty, I think, of snaps for Jakobi Meyers, which means more opportunities. So I think that's an intriguing thing for him. And to Kevin's point, he's the guy when it comes to it. Right now he's the guy on paper. So at wide receiver 40, like this dude's worst finish after his rookie year was his second season at wide receiver 57. Every year since then, where he's played in some situations, right? He was in New England as they were transitioning. He was in Las Vegas as they were transitioning as well, right? And he's returned wide receiver 23, 24, 28, 33 the last 4 years, right? So if you can get him at 40 and he can match what he's done the last 4 years, that's value, right? And it's not impossible for him to match what he's done the last 4 years. So I like Jakobi Meyers as well, and I especially like him if he's going to go around wide receiver 40 because I do think he's going to return value for you there.
Right. Yeah, this is one that I would see very similar production for him that we saw, this year that we saw last year, right? Somewhere between 80, 90 receptions, probably right around about 1,000 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, right? So kind of rinse and repeat with this one. So I do think that there is some, kind of a safe play. And this is a guy that you can pick up as a wide receiver for your roster, and provides an extremely safe and extremely high floor on this one. This isn't a guy that's going to go out and win you a week, but a guy that you can kind of reliably put in your roster, to go through bye weeks, to go through and fill in for an injury type of thing, and still get a safe floor and safe production out of. So I do like Jakobi Meyers from that aspect, and do like kind of the value where he's going there. It's going to be one of those that he's not going to go out there and win you a week, but you're going to see a very reliable wide receiver 2 to flex type of play week in, week out here. Any other thoughts on Jakobi Meyers? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Jordan Addison. And last year, Jordan Addison, 63 receptions, 99 targets, 875 yards, 9 touchdowns. 3 rushing attempts for 20 yards and a touchdown. Thoughts on Jordan Addison?
I feel like this is about right for Jordan Addison, even with the looming suspension. So, wide receiver 20 last year, wide receiver 21 the year before. He did miss 2 games towards the beginning of last season as well. So I think this suspension is probably going to be another 3, maybe 4 games. Kind of like Rashee Rice, or at least what we alluded to with Rashee Rice. So, he misses another 2 games. Okay, you figure his touchdowns are probably going to drop down this initial year with McCarthy being at the helm, but he does still have explosive play capability. We've seen weeks last season where he finished wide receiver 1, another week he finished wide receiver 3, another week he finished wide receiver 4. So he has that boom potential. And if you're grabbing a guy here in the late 30s, what more could you ask for, right? You can build around this. You understand you're going to absorb the time off. And then you kind of hit the home run play. So I really do like it for best ball a ton, because I think you're protected and you can capitalize on some of these potential big weeks from him regardless. Redraft leagues, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious. It's going to depend on what my wide receiver room looks like and where I need to fill in. So if I know that I'm going to need that production at the beginning of the season and I need to just kind of have a better overall, wide receiver room, I'm probably going to be leaning a Jakobi Meyers, what we just talked about. However, if I feel like I'm stacked at the top and I feel like I have room to play, and this could be a move that, yes, I absorb it, but then he's going to be able to fill in on bye weeks and down the stretch, like be a permanent place in my roster, then I take that shot on Jordan Addison and kind of let the chips fall where they may. Maybe he becomes trade fodder if he comes back and blows up a little bit, but you think you need a different piece than him, doing some different things like that. But I do think that the potential's there with how Minnesota runs that offense. It's a really lean target tree, right? There's basically 3, you call it 4 guys if you're adding in Aaron Jones, but you have Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, and then Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield. There's not a lot of targets that go outside of those 4 people. And Minnesota, for everything they are, they're not necessarily built to just pound the rock. They're going to be throwing the football. They're going to be making sure they feed their star receiver, or trying to feed their star receiver in Justin Jefferson. And when Addison and Jefferson are on the field at the same time, a lot of teams, rightfully so, will focus in on JJ and let Addison kind of roam a little bit more free, which provides those big weeks. So I'm willing to take the gamble, but I am going to have the right roster construct to truly swallow that with pride. Otherwise, I might just skip over him and be looking at like a Jakobi Meyers, where I feel like there's a little bit more consistency within those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the pros and cons list when it comes to Jordan Addison, and the pro list is he plays opposite of Justin Jefferson. So teams are going to forget about him on occasion, right? Like defenses are going to forget about him because they are so hyper-focused on making sure that Justin Jefferson doesn't go crazy on him. The con list is, you kind of have to absorb that. Like you mentioned, Kevin, we don't know what the suspension is from the NFL. So you're going to be without him for at least multiple games, right? Like that's the kind of the thought process here. It's not going to be just a 1-game suspension. And so last year, he did miss the 2 games. I again think this is going to be more than just the 2 games. I think the NFL will send a message here to try and keep these guys off the field antics. It's an image thing, right? You got to protect the shield. We've already seen a few driving offenses that have really tarnished the NFL. So I think they come down rather hard here. And rightfully so. So like those are the pros and cons that you kind of have to weigh. I agree with you, Kevin. I think as a best ball, like Jordan Addison here is fantastic because I don't know that he really finishes here at wide receiver 39. But he might, depending on how many games he has to miss. So it could be tough. One other point I want to point out to you, Kevin, you mentioned that he had the ability to finish in that high-end wide receiver 1 territory. The week that he finished wide receiver number 1, he had 8 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets. Fantastic week. The week that he finished wide receiver 13 was week 14 last year, or excuse me, wide receiver number 3 was week 14 last year. He had 8 catches on 12 targets for 133 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that was only good enough for wide receiver 3. So week 14 was wild last year.
Right. And Jordan Addison's a guy that I really like for a best ball type of format, right? You get the boom weeks and you don't have to deal with any of the ho-hum weeks on this one, right? Because he does have the ability to go out there and win you a week and put up wide receiver 1 overall on the week. We've seen it a couple of different times throughout his rookie season and through last year there as well. Where he's coming off the board is a value, right? Like you talk about a guy that finished top 24 both seasons in the league, but he's currently coming off the board at wide receiver 39. Like there's some value on that. Now the problem is that some of this will be touchdown dependent, right? The 9 touchdowns, 10 total touchdowns last season. That's a big number and a big number for the number 2 or even a third option in an offense to replicate, right? Like some of these things, when you look back at his rookie season and look back at last year, rookie season, you had Justin Jefferson miss a fair bit of time. This last season, you had TJ Hawkinson miss a fair bit of time. And he was, for good chunks of those, he was very much the second option on that team. And I think this season he does come in as the wide receiver 3 as far as the pecking order or the pecking order for targets on this one. And you've got an inexperienced quarterback there as well. So ton of risk in this one, but there is also a ton of upside to it. So it is kind of a proceed with caution, but at least with where he's coming off the board, that ADP is kind of factoring in some of that risk. So I do kind of like that. Any other thoughts on Jordan Addison? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Deebo Samuel. And last year, Deebo Samuel, 51 receptions, 81 targets, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns, 42 rushing attempts, 136 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. Thoughts on Deebo?
I pass. I don't know. I feel like Deebo's kind of a mixed bag. And I think depending on who you're talking to, you do get mixed emotions. There's some folks who really like this landing spot. A lot of folks, maybe not so much. I worry about Deebo going into this Washington offense, and not because he's a character issue. Like he never really raised a bunch of cane in San Francisco and caused locker room problems. He had that one great season. And outside of that, if he's not rushing the ball for 8 touchdowns and kind of bolstering running back 2 numbers combined with his wide receiver 2 numbers to make him what he was, this is just kind of where the dude lives. Like you're going to have to deal with some really poor weeks out of Deebo Samuel. He does carry a little bit of an injury risk here lately, missing multiple games each of the last couple of years. New team. Okay, fine. I think the one shining spot for Deebo Samuel is if the Commanders do not get the deal done with Terry McLaurin. Like that's where Debo might actually like kind of stand out and have some great value here. So if you think you have an inclination that the deal with Scary Terry is not going to be done and he's going to be a holdout, hold in, whatever you want to phrase it as, then Debo does present some value here. I am not under that assessment. I think that, they're trying just to add another weapon, but I don't think that he is going to be a difference maker on your fantasy roster most weeks. And I would rather take the ceiling of an Addison or again, Jacoby Myers, who we just talked about. I'd rather take the consistency from Jacoby because Debo's boom weeks are not that impressive compared to others. Like that's just not his skill set.
Yeah, I think so. What's tough about this is that like he's going to a team and a quarterback who liked to throw the short pass last year, right? Like that could be Debo's role. But here's the thing, like young quarterbacks like to throw the short pass because it's the path of least resistance, right? Like the game will slow down for Jaden Danielson, like it hasn't already. The guy took him to the NFC Championship game, right? But like the game will slow down. The short pass won't be so much of a featured option in the Commanders' offense. So I do think that Debo has a role. I'm with you, Kevin. Like, and I was kind of hoping that you were gonna say like, "Oh, yeah, Debo's gonna be great. I'm going after him," because I'm not. Like, I'm not going after Debo at all. Again, the inconsistency for me is something that is just not something I'm willing to entertain over the course of a season. Sure, in a best ball, he's worth the flyer, right? Like because he can have these big weeks. But in a redraft where I'm needing to fill out a roster every week, like I don't want the headache of will he or won't he, contribute to my roster. And it's just not worth it to me when there is options later on with a Jacoby Myers or a Jordan Addison, who I think is kind of in this same boat. But I can wait a half round. I can get Jacoby Myers a half round later, right? Like so, it feels easier to me.
Yeah, this one here is an interesting one, right? Because Alex, I'm surprised you didn't bring up the trend of the odd years being good years for Debo, right? The even years not so much, right? We're going into an odd year, but new offense, new situation, certainly a different role for Debo here. The one thing that I could see that potentially could help out with that is a lot of receivers, especially as they do hold-ins, however you want to call it, while they're waiting for the contracts to try and get settled out and play in, tend to get off to slower starts as they come through, right? Like there's that element of being in camp, being participating in the drills and the scrimmages and being part of that, and then coming in later and missing some of that type of thing, right? So that is one thing that could potentially raise the floor for me for Debo is if this Scary Terry holdout looms later into the training camp, and as we start getting into the preseason and what that really starts looking like here for the as we start entering the season. All of that to say that I don't know that we're going to see Debo really rebound on this one. It does seem like over the last few years we've had a lot of health adversity and time missed on this one, and I don't know that I necessarily want to take that shot on a guy that's been a little bit has missed several times over the last little bits, and is a guy that I don't know that we're going to see a big bounce back on this one. Like I think the absolute ceiling for Debo is around 60 receptions and 700 yards, maybe 5-6 touchdowns. Like that's just not going to get the job done. Certainly not going to return much value. You might get about what you return on that one, but I think it's going to be a streaky road nonetheless. Any other thoughts on Debo? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Rome Odunze. And last year, Rome Odunze, 54 receptions, 101 targets, 734 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Rome?
So all of 2024, I told everyone, I don't want Odunze this season. I want him for next season. And I'm not going to fully walk that back because I do feel like Rome Odunze does provide some options, but I wasn't expecting Chicago to give 6 more weapons to Caleb Williams. Like, I thought the tree would narrow a little bit, not expand. That being said, wide receiver 56 last year, like, I do expect him to be better than that this year. So I do feel like this 37 is probably about accurate. So he is going to return some value here. I think we're going to see some bigger weeks come from him this year as he enters his sophomore season. He's kind of that prime sophomore breakout candidate that a lot of people have looked for in years past before kind of some of these monstrous rookie year numbers that some receivers have put out. So I'm picking up Odunze in a couple different places. Like, I am not fully pot committed, but I am sprinkling him in on a couple different best ball lineups that I'm working on. Season long, I do worry a little bit, only because there's so many mouths to feed in Chicago now. I am pretty worried about kind of loading up on any one guy. And if there is one, I'm probably going with DJ Moore over anybody else there in Chicago. So I'm not as excited about him in a redraft league, but I do expect this wide receiver, 35 to 40 range to kind of hold true for Rome Odunze, unless he does take that big time leap in his sophomore season. And even at that, I think we see him back in wide receiver 2. Like, I don't think we're going to see anything higher than, best case scenario, wide receiver 23, 24 season out of him.
Yeah, I don't want any part of Rome Odunze. Call me scorned from last year, where I was one of the people that thought, like, oh yeah, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, they're gonna get something going here. I'm not buying that anymore. And then what did the Bears do? They've got DeAndre Swift, who is a great pass catcher out of the backfield. They've got DJ Moore, who is an alpha in this league, right? At least on this team. And then they go and draft Luther Burden. They go and draft Colston Loveland. They've got Cole Kmet on the roster. Like, Odunze just kind of keeps getting shuffled down the way. So you're right, Kevin. I think that the offense there, like, that, for as much as I like, what I said about Jacoby Dixon was there's going to be opportunity because of the amount of plays run. It's the opposite for Rome Odunze because sure, he might be on the field, but there's 5 other pass catchers that are going to be on the field with him at any given time, including a really good pass catching running back, right? Which is, again, a huge, huge benefit to a young quarterback. So I want nothing to do with Rome Odunze this year, and it might be to my downfall, but I'm staying so far away from him, especially here at wide receiver 30. What are we? 37, 72nd player overall. No, thank you. I'll wait another round and get Jacoby Myers. Like that's I'm way more comfortable with.
Fair enough. There are several things that you can point out to go, aha, this could be the breakout here, right? Like, things kind of line up there, and that very well could be. And where he's coming off the board, if you buying into that, that strategy and buying into that thought process that that there could be the sophomore breakout. Certainly there's some value here, but this is a player that is going to be in a reworked offense, right? The Bears have a lot of things kind of going on, right? And I think Ben Johnson's going to have his work cut out for him as far as trying to reshape this organization and all of that, how that goes. You guys mentioned the other pass catching weapons that are in this as well. That I think just kind of muddles the water on this one. So this is a deal that I think when we look up at the end of the season, we're going to be looking at Rome Odunze with a wide receiver 3 type of finish, right? Kevin put the ceiling at back end wide receiver 2, and I think that there's a world that could happen. Get all the way up to wide receiver 23, but I think more than likely we see him finish in that 25 to 36 range, and I would be leaning more towards the back end of wide receiver 3 territory. So I am not looking to put Rome Odunze on many of my rosters this year. Any other thoughts on Rome Odunze?
I do have one. Would you rather have Rome Odunze or Stephon Diggs?
I want Diggs.
Yeah.
I agree. And we talked about Diggs last week. Diggs is going wide receiver 43, pick 88 right now.
I'm a sucker for a number 1 though, right? Like, and it's a narrow route tree. It's a number 1 wide receiver. Like, I'm gonna take Diggs over a lot of guys that we talk about tonight. Like, that's how highly I think about the guy this year. So I could be dead wrong on Diggs, but with where I'm getting him, like,
right,
the value's there for me too.
But the situation is also better, right? Like, and so like that's what you kind of have to think about as you're coming up on these guys, is that later on there are options that aren't as costly, right? So I think that's what you have to take into account when you're getting some of these kind of mid wide receiver 3 with upside back end wide receiver 2 territory. Like that, the options are out there that are maybe a little bit further down that return a better value for you. And I say all that, and now I'm going to say goodbye for the night. The JOB is calling for me tomorrow at an ungodly time. So I will bid you all adieu. The episode continues just without me, and that's probably for the best. So fellas, take it easy. We'll see you guys next week.
Have the good one. Alrighty. Any other thoughts on the Odunze?
No more thoughts.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Juwan Jennings. And last year, Juwan Jennings, 77 receptions, 113 targets, 975 yards, 6 touchdowns. Thoughts on Juwan Jennings?
I don't know that I'm a believer in Juwan Jennings with where he's going. I would rather wait until just a little bit later. I'm more of a Ricky Pearsall believer for San Francisco than I am Juwan Jennings. I'm interested to see how this contract thing that he's asking for works out and what he decides to do or not do in training camp. And I'm going to take the draft capital here. Like, the Niners believed in Ricky Pearsall to draft him in the first round. He's going to be a focal point, and they're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. And so if I'm drafting a Niners pass catcher, that's not George Kittle, I'm probably going to lean Ricky Pearsall. I could see Juwan Jennings sliding back out, and maybe he returns value with where he's going, or maybe not value, but just fair capital with where he's going. But I do think Pearsall has the ability to, take that step above him and be the true kind of number 1 there in San Francisco, as Brandon Ayuk is, not that he's becoming an afterthought, but just he's kind of a mental case here at the moment. He's got to get his head on straight.
So with Juwan Jennings, I'm not looking to really add him on many rosters, right? Like, this is another one where you start seeing some of these reports coming out where, looking for a new contract, potentially being traded. Kyle Shanahan coming out saying that, Juwan Jennings hasn't formally asked for a trade. And, some of the other kind of reports out there that Clint Kubiak seeing Juwan Jennings as a number one option for this offense. I don't know that I'm buying into much of the coach talk on this one and the coach speak. This is a guy that we saw the breakout happen in what, year 5? Like, that's the archetype that you're wanting to buy into is a year 5 breakout that pursues into year 6, right? I think that this was a guy that right place, right time last year as far as fantasy goes. Even if there's some chemistry with him and Brock Purdy, I don't know that it carries over to the point where George Kittle, healthy in this offense and seemingly becoming a focal point and a much more consistent option for San Francisco there over the last couple of seasons. If Christian McCaffrey back fully healthy, right? Like, that's a running back that's likely going to see over 100 targets in this offense. And I think that Ricky Pearsall takes that next step this year as well. So it wouldn't surprise me that Juwan Jennings is 4th in the pecking order when it comes to the target share and the concepts week in, week out. So I'm not buying into that much. He may still have he may still be able to return fair value on that, but I don't see him outshining the draft position as it sits. Any other thoughts on Juwan Jennings?
No, sir.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Chris Olave. And last year, 32 receptions, 44 targets, 400 yards, 1 touchdown for Chris Olave. Thoughts on Olave?
So obviously last year was not what people wanted out of Chris Olave. Obviously the concussions, he just could not shake it, right? Like, he just could not get over the symptoms. And so it left people wanting a bit more. Now, I feel like Olave is a value here, and I feel like his draft positioning is in large part because people are anticipating injury. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, when I'm looking at things, I really try to not overinflate for injury. And again, he is a number one. He's the number one option on a team that is going to be trailing in quite a few games. Yes, there's a new quarterback there, and they're going to be working through that a little bit. So I'm not saying that Olave has a huge ceiling, but I do think if he's remaining healthy, I think the opportunity for him to vastly improve his final position versus his draft day position is there. So I am going to take a couple flyers here on Chris Olave. Again, it's not going to be in every situation, but it is going to be in certain ones that I feel like I have really good 1-2 combo, and some good solid upside for the third guy. But that also means I'm probably going to go back-to-back wide receiver here again and protect my pick. So he's not going to be a standalone where then I draft him and then I ignore the position for a little bit and I go do some deeper dives. I am going to draft him, and then in the next round, or maybe the one after that, I'll skip one round, and then I'm going to go another wide receiver to try and protect my investment here just a little bit, just in case. I hope to be wrong, but Olave is a talent. Like, he just is. He is a talent. He's not on a very good team right now, but again, if he remains healthy, the target share and opportunity should be there for him to surpass his current ADP.
Right. And I think there's a lot to that, right? So where he's coming off the board now is a firmly wide receiver 3. And if he stays healthy all year, I think that this is a guy that finishes inside the top 24 and is a wide receiver 2. Again, right, the injury notes over the last few years, a little bit of concern there. Bad offense, concern there. Uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position, concern there, and a bad offensive line. Big concern there, right? Like, but again, this is one of those that I think that you're onto something when you say that the Saints are going to be behind in a lot of games, and I think we're going to see the passing volume be there to try and get that try and play catch up. And this might be one of those that there's not a it doesn't come pretty, doesn't come early, but garbage time still counts for fantasy. And there's a good chance that he puts up solid week in, week out production on garbage time on that. And this is a guy that I don't mind taking as my wide receiver 3 because I think he can return better value than a lot of other guys that I could take as wide receiver 3 in this range. But I very much am going to approach that with the same thought that you had, that if I take him here, I'm basically turning around the next round and also taking another wide receiver to help round that out and really ensure that I've got the depth on this as well. Any other thoughts on Chris Olave?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and head over and we'll talk about Chris Godwin. And Chris Godwin last year was off to a tremendous start, and then the injury shortened the season up. 50 receptions, 62 targets, 576 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on Chris Godwin?
Man, I was so close to being able to just completely kind of pound the table and do my victory lap on what Chris Godwin was last year. Brutal, unfortunate injury in a game that was lost, right? And ultimately that's what it was. A game where Tampa Bay was going to lose that game. And it, just a freak play, dislocated his ankle, shortened the season. I'm curious to see how Chris Godwin comes back. He's starting the season on the PUP list, so they can take him off at any time before the season starts. If he remains on there, he's going to miss the first few games and kind of go from there. So Godwin's a guy that I'm going to be keeping my finger on the pulse pretty closely here as it comes up to especially our home league draft and kind of figure out what's going on there, because I do think that Baker trusts Godwin and that the two had amazing chemistry last year. And I think in some ways that is completely repeatable. It's just a matter of how soon Godwin can be on the field at full strength and kind of what I'm able to do. So I would tell you holistically, I do think that Chris Godwin will be able to return some value here. But the longer he stays on the PUP list, the more I kind of get concerned with that. And I'm not saying ankle injuries are bad, but I am saying that, I might be dancing around this one here just a little bit. However, if it comes down to it, I like Godwin more than I like Olave. And so in that type of range, right? Like I'm not going to drop down too far because his upside is better than Jacoby Myers also. So it's I think this is a good range for him, but I just need more information on the ankle. Like I'm so undecided on Chris Godwin right now. I feel like I'm teetering on it a little bit, but I want the guy to do well, but I am probably going to be missing him more so than I am taking him.
Right. Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because of like there's several narratives that you can spin on this one and have you have the thoughts to be able to kind of back that up, right? Like one of those narratives being the fact that this was a guy that before the injury last season was wide receiver number 2 overall on the season, right? Like had a massive target share, was just putting up fantasy points week in, week out. Baker was like, this was Baker's guy through that offense, right? The injury happened, lost the remainder of the season and finished with a finish where he was, right? But the fact that he's still not back from the ankle injury, starts the training camp on the PUP, does start asking and introducing the questions of, what does that look like for him coming back, right? Like how long is this going to take for him to be back at 100%? Is this a deal that he returns to 100% previous from the prior injury? The the Buccaneers also went out and drafted a guy in the first round to do that, and a guy that kind of fits in as the heir apparent to Chris Godwin. Also, coupling the fact that Mike Evans is still there. You've got the rookie they took last year as well that also had a very prominent role once Godwin left due to that injury. So I like Chris Godwin from the standpoint that if we do have some reports coming out that we're back to he's back to full strength, that he's we're going to see him go week 1 and we're anticipating a full go on this thing. This is a guy that easily slots in as a top 15 wide receiver for me, and this is a huge value. But on the flip side, if this lingers, if he stays on the PUP list, well into training camp, into the preseason, or even starts the season on that, drastically changes my narrative on that one to the point where I think that you might get what you kind of end up with what you drafted here with a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type of fantasy production for you. Any other thoughts on Chris Godwin?
No, I just hope he recovers well.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at Jerry Jeudy. And Jerry Jeudy last year, 90 receptions, 145 targets, 1,229 yards, 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on Jerry Jeudy?
Jerry Jeudy had 4 different quarterbacks throw him the ball last year and still ended up wide receiver 12. Now, as a Denver Bronco fan, this chaps my ass a little bit because this is what he showed last year was the guy we expected and kind of wanted in Denver and just was never able to get it to work. But I don't think he finishes as a wide receiver 1 again. There's more quarterback turmoil going on in Cleveland. So I do think that comes back down to earth. However, I do think that he could still be a back end wide receiver 2. That possibility is there. So there's some value built in with Jerry Jeudy. Clearly, we saw some of the boom weeks last season on what he, can do, right? We saw a wide receiver 1 finish against Denver of all teams. Wide receiver 4 finish. So, but other than that, it was more consistency that got him there than anything else, right? The monster week of Denver carried him, but outside of that, not that you can take the weeks away, but if you take away 235 yards and the touchdown that he had against Denver, he falls back down. So I don't mind Jerry Jeudy. He is kind of semi-polarizing amongst fantasy figures here right now. He's not a guy I'm searching after, but again, he's a number 1 option on a team that's going to be trailing. So they are going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. I think I want to know more about the quarterback position before I make final judgment on Jerry Jeudy. But if he wins that job, I am going to have a hard time overlooking him because I do think that Joe Flacco will find a way to feed him the rock.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because we just got done talking about Juwan Jennings in the year 5 breakout, right? Another guy, Jerry Jeudy, that kind of had a year 5 breakout on this one, but was very streaky on this one, and you really took some of the it really took a couple of weeks because it was really kind of weeks 11 through 18 that kind of cemented that one, with a couple of big blow up weeks in week 11, week 14 or week 13 coming through. Outside of that, only those two weeks is wide receiver 12 or better finishes on the week, and a whole lot of the rest of the season, only an additional 3 wide receiver 2 finishes. Outside of that, they were all wide receiver 3 or worse. So a guy that season long looked really good, but when going through the season on that one, unless you pick the right week, you're you weren't overly happy that you had Jerry Jeudy on your fantasy roster week in, week out there. So I am with you when it comes to the Joe Flacco side of things. If Joe Flacco is throwing him the football, I do like that. And I do think that we'll see another production year where we see over 1,000 yards out of Jerry Jeudy and call it somewhere between 80 and 90 receptions. If it's anybody else there, I am staying away from this one. I don't know that I want much on that one there. So I'm going to be out on Jerry Jeudy in a lot of different situations. Really depends on who I would have as my wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, looking into this thing to go, let's see about what I'm looking to do here in the 6th round for that. And so it's Jerry Jeudy being on my fantasy roster is going to heavily depend on the roster construct I have going into that pick. Any other thoughts on Jerry Jeudy?
No, sir.
Alrighty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter, the the highly drafted rookie coming into Jacksonville. Thoughts on Travis Hunter?
Great kid, football junkie. I'm interested, just like everybody, how much is offense versus defense is he going to be playing? Is this the missing piece that allows Trevor Lawrence to kind of take a step forward? Now, I think that the head coaching change is good. I think that will help him a little bit. So you want to say yes, that you will get some benefits, especially if your team runs IDPs and the little bit he does play defense, if those points kind of add to your stat line. That little bit of a cheat code, not quite Taysom Hill in the tight end spot cheat code, but maybe a little bit of a cheat code, right? Like if he's able to play corner and gets, 1 or 2 pass defensed and you get, a point or half a point for those on top of what he's doing as a receiver, every little bit helps. So I find him intriguing. I think this feels about right. I know kind of right after the draft, some of the early, redraft and best balls had him going much higher. He's kind of fallen down here in the mid 30s and he's hung out here for the better part of 3 or 4 weeks. So I do think that this feels about right. I would tell you he has a safe floor, right? He's a durable guy. He doesn't miss time, obviously, with the amount of time that he spent at on the field, in college. So I'm not so much worried about his health, but nevertheless, there's always a question mark. But I'll have a bit of Travis Hunter. Like I don't mind taking the dive here every once in a while and seeing how it pans out, because I do think that there's some hidden upside that people are just scratching the surface on, and until we're able to see him on the field in the preseason and really in the regular season, we're not going to quite know. So in the right situation, absolutely, I'll draft Travis Hunter and try and ride that high as opposed to being too late to this party.
Yeah. This one here, I have a hard time kind of getting behind this one. I think it's more of a case that I'm just willing to be wrong. In the scenario that you mentioned where, if you're also getting points for IDP and he's in there playing a fair bit of cornerback as well as wide receiver, then yes, I'll factor that in and we'll put him on the roster in that kind of scenario. But from a wide receiver perspective only, I think I'd rather take Jerry Jeudy over Travis Hunter, right? Like there's a lot to be said about the guy that is going to be probably is going to be the wide receiver 2 on this roster, right? I don't think that you'd have a hard time convincing me that he's going to see the wide receiver 1 roll over Brian Thomas Jr. in this offense. Couple that with the fact that if he's playing cornerback and all this and all that, you're probably looking at a little bit lower snap share, right? You're probably looking in the 70%, maybe 80% range, whereas most wide receiver 2s, you're looking at a 90+% snap share type of thing. So I do think that if he does play cornerback, that will likely take him off this field for a fair bit of plays, and they're going to try and really build him along to the speed and pace of the NFL game. And from where he's going right now, I'm having a hard time putting him on my roster with some of the other guys kind of going to that same range. Any other thoughts on Travis Hunter?
Negative, Ghost Rider.
All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Calvin Ridley. And last year, Calvin Ridley, 64 receptions, 120 targets, 1,017 yards, 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on Calvin Ridley?
I feel like Ridley is a very safe wide receiver 3 option. I do think Cam Ward will be able to kind of focus in on him, and as long as the two of them are building that rapport in camp, excuse me, I think Ridley could have a solid year. At wide receiver 2 upside. I don't think he gets any higher than that, but I think we could see him, possibly jump up into that 20 to 24 range. But I do think with where he's going, it's a pretty safe floor for Calvin Ridley here at the moment. So I don't mind taking a shot on him. I feel like he's probably, at least out of the last few guys that we've talked about, probably the safest floor here in this wide receiver 3 territory. So not quite the upside that I might be looking for my third wide receiver. But again, if you're starting out and you have, guys like Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson, or, some combination like that, Ridley's not bad. He's safe. Kind of balances that out a little bit.
Right. Yeah, this is a guy that I could I really like where he's coming off the board right now and the value that's there, right? Because you're getting a guy with a wide receiver price tag that I think at worst finishes, wide receiver 25, 26, right? So still some value there, but does have the value to get up there towards wide receiver 20, even 18 on the season, right? Through some just absolutely horrendous play down in Tennessee last year, still managed to have over 1,000 yards through the air. And I think that we see another 1,000+ yards on this one. Wouldn't surprise me to see a 5-6 touchdown type of season here as well. So again, this is a guy that you're drafting at wide receiver 3, I think has wide receiver 2 upside. And, it will be on a team that will likely be trailing a fair bit. And as that number 1 option, should see a quite a bit of volume in there as well. So wouldn't surprise me that, I feel like for a wide receiver, a guy you're drafting as a wide receiver 3, you're getting a very safe floor, but you're also getting some pretty decent upside here as well. Any other thoughts on Calvin Ridley? All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Waddle last year, 58 receptions, 83 targets, 744 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Thoughts on Jalen Waddle?
Jalen Waddle scares the crap out of me. His rookie season, so good. Obviously, they brought Tyreek in. It changes things up a little bit. Like, I am just so concerned with what to do with Jalen Waddle. I mean, he had a week last year where he had negative yards as a wide receiver. Just the Tua situation is bad enough, and that's a headache at times. And I don't know that I want to fight all of that consistently. Like I need it. I don't know that I need. If I'm going to be drafting the number 2 receiver on any given team, I want some consistency and some high ceiling that goes along with that on some boom weeks. Waddle's floor is terribly low for a number 2 receiver. And so I think more often than not, I'm just going to pass on it. Like, it's an interesting best ball stack, just like it was last year, and kind of how all those players kind of pan out. But in redraft leagues, I'm really leaving Waddle alone. I'm not going to be fighting that headache. I will look for other options and probably feel much better at the end of the day for it.
Right. Yeah, this is a guy that I really don't want to deal with on a week in, week out basis, and certainly will be looking other options when I'm looking for my wide receiver 3 for my roster. Jalen Waddle, since Tyreek has really kind of come into Miami, has failed to deliver on the ADP that we've seen him we've seen him taken with. So this is a guy that I am pretty firmly just out on, and really am not looking to put on really any of my rosters. So yeah, I'm just plain out on Jalen Waddle. Any other thoughts on Jalen Waddle? All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at George Pickens. And George Pickens last year, 59 receptions, 103 targets, 900 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on George Pickens? That's one.
Dang it, that's one. I like Pickens a lot this year. I think that he's going to see a ton of opportunity in Dallas, much the same as we've seen Jordan Addison have a ton of opportunity in Minnesota. Being paired with CeeDee Lamb, it allows Dak to have a true number 2 receiver and do some different things there. So I have been grabbing a good amount of George Pickens in different drafts. And I expect that to continue. So I don't mind this. I think he could finish, mid to even top end wide receiver 2 when it's all said and done with, because Dallas just needs it. I'm not impressed with what their running game is going to be. I feel like they're going to be trailing in a fair amount of games here. And ultimately, I know Schottenheimer, likes to run the ball, but game script is game script. And I think that this Dallas defense is built to get after the passer, and you have to be playing with the lead for that to happen. So I just like how the setup is for Pickens here right now. I think is a really good trade for Dallas. Hopefully they get him signed to a longer term deal and we can see this going forward. But for now, it's a contract year, so I'm grabbing the kid.
Yeah. This is one of those that George Pickens for me is an interesting one, right? Because I can spin the narrative one of 2 ways, right? That this is a guy that should see some good volume playing opposite CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott will where I'm anticipating to have a very good season, and so this could be one of those that we see a kind of a big blow up role like we saw from Michael Gallup in the past in this offense. Even Brandon Cooks had some good kind of run there. But on the same time, this is a receiver that hasn't been that volume based type of receiver. Certainly been the big play guy. So this is a guy that I think will ultimately be a very boom bust kind of guy week in, week out. The blow up weeks, you're going to absolutely love it. And the weeks that it just isn't quite there, you're going to be really kind of kicking yourself that he was in your roster spot there. But I still do like the value for where George Pickens is coming off the board, because I think that this is a guy that's, he's coming off of a board of wide receiver 3, does have wide receiver 2 upside here. But a guy that I'm absolutely loving for best ball, because I do think that we're going to see several blow up weeks, but I think we're also going to see a couple of those weeks that you're gonna wish that he hadn't been in a starting roster spot when it's all said and done this coming year. Any other thoughts on George Pickens? No. Okay. All righty. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and hop in and take a look here at were there any other thoughts on George Pickens?
No, we're good. We're good, buddy.
All righty. Let's go ahead and hop in and take a look at Zay Flowers. And last year, Zay Flowers, 74 receptions, 116 targets, 1,059 yards, 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on Zay Flowers?
So I like Zay Flowers with where he's going. It's not a super pass heavy offense that Baltimore runs, but that does provide plenty of opportunity because of the Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry effect. So Zay Flowers is a guy who's kind of gotten a little bit better each year. I think we could see another step forward if he's able to find the end zone a bit more. And that's really the problem is he's not a red zone target. We get into the red zone and we are looking at Derrick Henry, we're looking at Mark Andrews, we're looking at Isaiah Likely, even Rashad Bateman, who saw more red zone targets than Zay Flowers did. So that's probably the biggest knock on the guy is you can't trust him to get the ball inside the 20. And that's just how Baltimore's set up. So there is some buyer beware. I would like to see that number increase from 4 touchdowns to, closer to 6, maybe 7. I think I'd be much more comfortable with that if I knew I was getting 6 or 7 touchdowns out of it. But I could see him, continue to creep up a little bit, maybe on some of the more explosives if they're able to do some different things with Bateman and help bait. Bait those safeties to keep him in between Derrick Henry and Bateman. So there's opportunity there for big play. I do like it for best ball for that reason, right? When Flowers does get the ball in his hands, he can be extremely electric. Sometimes it's just Baltimore's offense in general, regardless of who's calling plays, just because of how their roster construct is. So I think you're getting fair value here. I think there's a bit of upside here for Zay Flowers, but it is a deterrent knowing that when they're inside the 20, they're not looking his way. They're looking at a couple other options, and he becomes 4th or 5th almost in the pecking order as far as red zone targets go. So a little bit of buyer beware, but overall, I think Bateman is poised, or excuse me, I think Flowers is poised to have a really good season and lead the receiving core in overall targets for Baltimore.
Yeah. This is a guy that seems very much like a kind of a rinse and repeat of last year, right? Like when it's all said and done, not going to surprise me if we look up and we see him somewhere between 1,000, 1,100 yards and 5-6 touchdowns, right? Like that's kind of where I see him at the end of the season. Now, problem is that it's going to be a streaky play, and it's going to be a, little bit of a roller coaster ride on this one here as well. But some of that's baked in because of where he's going, and in a wide receiver 3 territory, some of that is to be expected, right? There's, this type of range is not really where you're looking for, you're not really anticipating getting week in, week out, very safe floor. But there are some things that also draw some concerns, right? You mentioned the red zone targets. He's not the guy that they look for down in the red zone. That will fall to Mark Andrews. They just added DeAndre Hopkins onto this roster as well. Another guy, another big bodied wide receiver that, very much a possession guy at this point in his career. So, wouldn't surprise me if that really kind of takes precedent there. And now you're looking more to a lot of big play ability from Zay Flowers, as well as the fact that Baltimore was the second most run heavy offense last season. Certainly doesn't set up well for that. We would anticipate them leading in several games throughout the season and going down the stretch. So not even looking at potential garbage time type of plays to bring that thing home and really deliver on a weekly basis there. So Zay Flowers, I don't mind, but it is a proceed with caution. Because I don't know that there's much more upside than where he's going, right? Like I think the upside for Zay Flowers, on the best that we're going to see on the season is maybe a wide receiver 22 finish, but I think it's probably more likely we see him finish in that like 24 to 28 range, which is kind of right where he's being drafted at. Any other thoughts on Zay Flowers? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Jameson Williams. And last year, Jameson Williams, 58 receptions, 91 targets, 1,001 yards, 7 touchdowns, 61 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Thoughts on Jameson Williams?
I like JMO, right? And I do think that I think this is kind of the next evolution, right? He's kind of done with his growing pains, right, if you will. Last season we started to see exactly what he could be, and I think we do see a continuation of that. I'm not saying that we completely get away from Amon-Ra or that we do complete different things with the offense, even though Johnson left to go to Chicago. But I do think that Jameson Williams has shown enough to be featured a little bit more. So I wouldn't be surprised to see these targets click up. I see him, somewhere possibly around wide receiver 20. when it's all said and done with. So a little bit of ceiling. He has big play potential. Kid's still lightning fast, so you do kind of get those big the boom plays, the bonus weeks, if or bonus points in certain weeks, if you will. So I like the guy. I'm rooting for him, and he's a guy that I've had to decide between him and George Pickens a lot, right? Just kind of again where they're going in drafts, knowing that they're not going to come back, this type of thing. So I have gone more Pickens than Jameson Williams because Detroit's running game is so strong. But if you think that George Pickens in Dallas is going to be a bust, I think this is a great pivot to go JMO here.
Fair enough. And I really like Jameson Williams in a best ball format, but in a season-long redraft, I'm having a hard time kind of pressing the draft when this one comes up, right? Because he is such a boom bust kind of player that we've seen, right? Like he has the ability to go out and deliver week winning performances. On the flip side, there's also there's also going to be a lot of down weeks in there as well, and those down weeks, if you've got them in your roster, are going to be very hard to stomach. Yeah, that being said, too, we're also into a very I would expect Jared Goff to have some regression this year. From a statistical standpoint, right? Like Jared Goff had an MVP type of season last year that he ended up not winning the MVP on. But I don't think we see some regression there. I do think that, with the offensive coordinator, there's going to be a little bit of growing pains, right? The Ben Johnson, Jared Goff connection was real, right? Like they seemed very much to be on the same page and having that go. And things just kind of work and run when that's the case. I think James Williams does provide wide receiver 2 upside with the wide receiver 3 draft capital, but I just don't know that I want to endure the ride on the up and down weeks. Any other thoughts on Jameson Williams?
No, sir.
All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Devonta Smith. And last year, Devonta Smith, 69 receptions, 89 targets, 833 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Thoughts on Devonta Smith?
I feel like I guess I feel like Devonta Smith's a pretty safe wide receiver too. He's in an offense that's going to be on the field a lot. They're aggressive on fourth downs. He sees a pretty healthy amount of target shares. Again, Philadelphia is not an expansive target tree. You have AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, obviously Saquon. You throw in a little bit of Dallas Goedert, but really it's pretty narrowed as far as who Jalen Hurts is passing the ball to, and there's not going to be. There's going to be a couple weeks where you do kind of shake your head and ask if he forgot to lace up his cleats and get on the field. But overall, he is a pretty consistent wide receiver. Like he does fill out the stat sheet. He does see targets week in and week out. You just hope that they're the right kind of targets. Another kind of weird situation where, he had a week where he had 2 targets, 1 reception for -2 yards last year, right? It is kind of that weird offshoot, which is obviously damning to your production numbers at the end of the season, how things kind of get averaged out and whatnot. So did miss 4 games last year and still produced to be a wide receiver 2. So I think Philly's going to be in a couple more games, maybe this year than they were last. Hopefully he's able to stay a little bit healthier and play 15, 16 games instead of missing 4 of them. But Devonta Smith, I'm good with putting on my roster. Like, I feel like I know what I'm going to get. If you can get him as your 3rd wide receiver, it's kind of money in the bank. Like he does have really good upside, but his floor overall is a lot safer than many of the guys who we've spoken about tonight.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is he's kind of that known commodity, right? Like you kind of just know what you're going to get with Devonta Smith, and really you're going to get somewhere around about 900 yards to 1,000 yards in there, and somewhere in that 7-8 touchdown range, right? So pretty safe floor. The ceiling is certainly a little bit capped when it comes to some of these other guys on the roster with AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, you certainly have some other good receiving and good pass catching options there. And when both AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert are healthy and on the field, it does certainly seem to be a very off week for Devonta Smith. Whereas if either one of them miss times, he tends to have a very good week there. Couple that with the fact that Philadelphia was the heaviest run offense last season. That also further kind of limits the upside. Now, we may see that where we may see a little bit more of a little bit more balance in that this year, but this is still one that I think that they're going to be a run heavy, run first team, and we're going to see Devonta Smith ultimately capped out around that 1,000 yards, eight touchdowns. But you may see a little bit of upside on this with may see him sneak all the way up to like wide receiver 20, but I don't know that the ceiling's much higher than that. But I feel like you're still getting a pretty safe floor with wide receiver 26. I think we'll see him very back end wide receiver 2, top end wide receiver 3. Any other thoughts on Devonta Smith? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Tet McMillan. And Tet McMillan, the rookie drafted out of Arizona and heading to the Panthers. Thoughts on Tet McMillan?
I think I like the landing spot in the sense that there's not really anyone else that's going to compete with targets for him. So I could see McMillan end up with 130 plus targets in his rookie campaign. If we see the Bryce Young that we saw going down the stretch of 24, I think that there's a good opportunity for both these players to kind of grow and develop together. So again, opportunity is there. My problem is there's a good number of running backs in this same range. So I do overall have kind of a challenge hitting draft on Tet McMillan, only because generally I already have a couple wide receivers on my roster at this point, and I'm looking to build some running back depth. That being said, I don't mind it. I think there's plenty of opportunity here. If you think that he's going to be seeing, again, 130-ish targets in his rookie campaign, there's a good case for him to be able to bring down 80, 85 balls, and then touchdowns you're hoping for 5+. We'll see how this shakes out. But Carolina's a team that they do trail in these games, but they're just kind of that stingy team that never went away. They're able to sneak out some pretty good victories last year. I think you could see more of that. And as long as they're in the game, Bryce Young's going to be looking for his guy. And at this point, Jalen Coker and Tet McMillan are kind of the clear 1 and 2 on Carolina here at the moment.
Yeah, I think that Tet McMillan is it seems like every year we have that the wide receiver that just kind of blows up, has a great fantasy rookie season. Tet McMillan certainly seems to be in the best position to be able to do that. Now, I do think that we certainly see a ton of volume, ton of opportunity here. I think that Carolina is going to be trailing in a fair bit of games, so the garbage time still counts and playing catch up still counts. So I do think that we're going to see Tet be the beneficiary of that significantly. Yeah, not going to surprise me if we see him north of 1,000 to 1,100 yards in a rookie year with 7, 8, 9 touchdowns, right? Like I think that we can probably see that type of production out of him. So I certainly like where he's coming off the board. I certainly like the draft capital being spent on that. However, there is, right, and you mentioned that just a moment ago about some of the running backs that are being taken in this range. that's the reason that I probably won't see too much of Tet McMillan on many of my rosters, just from the standpoint that, yeah, I'm probably going to be looking to add my second or third running back in this draft capital range instead of looking to add my third wide receiver. Any other thoughts on Tet McMillan? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over. Take a look at take a look at Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy last year, 59 receptions, 98 targets, 638 yards, 6 touchdowns, 20 rushing attempts for 104 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Thoughts on Xavier Worthy?
I do kind of like Xavier Worthy with where he's going right here. I think that when we look at his season, he is that player who it took him a couple weeks, right? It took him about half the season to kind of get going. But if you look at the back half stretch of the season, and especially come playoff time for fantasy football, he was great, right? He was seeing, 7, 6, 11, 11, 9 targets down the stretch, a couple touchdowns in there. So it felt like him and Mahomes kind of got on the same page. He is seeing a couple of those rush attempts because we all know Kansas City loves their gadget plays. And so I do think that you can see some more opportunity as they expand their playbook. Part of the deal with Xavier Worthy is kind of the lack of deep shot or deep shot connection that we saw. A lot of that just comes to the coverage, right? Like so many teams, especially on the Chiefs, are playing it too high and making Mahomes just kind of dink and dunk his way down the field. But I think with the offseason, knowing Rashee Rice is going to miss the first couple weeks, Travis Kelce's another year older, I do think that there's some opportunity here. I do bob back and forth. Is this the piece of Kansas City Chiefs that I want? Depending on where Xavier Worthy, or no, excuse me, not Xavier Worthy, where Rashee Rice falls, will kind of impact my enthusiasm on Xavier Worthy. I think if Rashee Rice, if he gets out of this and only misses 2 or 3 games, I think I'd still rather have Rice, just because of what he does for Mahomes. But if he's missing more, 4, 5, 6 games, then I think if you're wanting a piece of Kansas City offense, Xavier Worthy does make sense in that aspect. So I like the kid. He did see improvement, which is what you like to see going into year 2. So if he's able to take that next step forward, you can see where that game script comes, where Kansas City's maybe a bit more explosive than what they've been in years past. Teams obviously continuing to try and find ways to beat Patrick Mahomes, and he's one of those guys on any given play, right? You fall asleep for 1 second and Worthy's past you, and if that's the case, Mahomes will find him.
Right. And this is one of those two that, right, Xavier Worthy faced his own kind of legal issues, allegedly in the off season, and still not a firm stance by the league if Xavier Worthy will miss time due to that. So, yeah, that certainly does add some doubt in there for me. But Xavier Worthy, right? Like I get the upside, I get the potential. I can see why a lot of people will be drafting him kind of in this range, especially if they're thinking that Rashee Rice will miss an extended period of time. But even with Xavier, or even with Rashee Rice missing a significant amount of time during the season last year, really didn't see Xavier Worthy step into that role and really return a ton of value on this one. This is a guy that I think ultimately we see kind of a lot of what we saw last year, right? We see a lot of 4 for 40, 4 for 50 yards and type of performances, and not going to surprise when we look up at the end of the season and we see another 600 yards and 5 touchdown performance out of him. So at this point, Xavier Worthy is a guy that I am not looking to add really to any of my my redraft leagues, a guy that I might put on a best ball format here and there, just from the standpoint that the big play potential is there. And if we happen to see one or two big blow up plays, that could go out and ultimately be worth a pick to rock and roll that through on a best ball format. But yeah, not looking to add Xavier Worthy really to any of my fantasy rosters this year. Any other thoughts on Xavier Worthy?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Cortland Sutton. And Cortland Sutton last year, 81 receptions, 135 targets, 1,081 yards, 8 touchdowns. Thoughts on Cortland Sutton?
Yes, please. So there's been so much talk, right, about the Broncos offense, Bo Nix. We feel like it's on the upswing here. Again, he's probably not going to blow anybody away with, single game statistics, but he is extremely safe. Him and Bo Nix did build a nice rapport. I think we continue to see that out of the Denver Broncos. And he's a guy that I am okay. If I'm waiting on wide receiver a little bit, this is a very safe but yet fulfilling wide receiver too. He will fill the stat sheet. You can take your home run plays or your home run players and kind of look other places. But Sutton does get his deep shots too. He is still quick. He is still quick enough that they do design him to go deep once or twice a game. And Bo Nix does throw a really good deep ball. So I don't mind Cortland Sutton at all. I think he does have another very strong season for the Denver Broncos. And again, he's not in that realm of the top 2 or 3 tiers of wide receiver echelon, but I do think when you're talking about drafting a guy here in the early 20s, I think that you are going to get adequate return on your investment, potentially being able to sneak up into the top end of wide receiver 2, much like he did last year. And we'll see the Broncos take another step forward collectively.
Right. Yeah, this is a guy that I really like where he's coming off the board and where he returns value at on this one, right? Like I feel like you're drafting him at his absolute floor on this one. Now, not going to surprise me if we look up at the end of the season, we see him flirting with that fringe wide receiver 1 territory on this one, right? Like this is a guy that certainly showed that they had the chemistry between him and Bo Nix, and is a guy that several quarterbacks in Denver have really. He's been the red zone targeted guy when they get down there and they're making the passing plays. Like that's the guy that they're looking for once they get down into the red zone. And I don't think that really changes. Yes, Evan Ingram coming into play probably provides another option there and may eat into some of those red zone targets. But at the same time, too, having 2 very big body athletic playmaking pass catchers down there in the red zone ultimately may end up freeing up better opportunities for Cortland Sutton as well. So I really like where he's coming off the board. It's you really like the fact that you're still able to get the team's number 1 wide receiver this late in with draft capital. And I do think that we see some very good value returned on Cortland Sutton's draft position. Any other thoughts on Cortland Sutton?
No, go Broncos.
All right, I like it. All right, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf last season, 66 receptions, 108 targets, 992 yards, 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on DK Metcalf?
I feel like I don't know what I feel. DK Metcalf, I think you could spin this in one or two ways. Either it's going to work with Aaron Rodgers and he's going to be explosive and he's going to see enough targets to climb back up into the back end of wide receiver 1 territory, or it's going to be a disaster and you're going to see him finish down in wide receiver 3 territory. I find him polarizing. I'm not quite sure what to make of this deal in Pittsburgh, but Rodgers does hyper focus on his alpha, and DK Metcalf is clearly that guy this year. So history would tell us that this is good value for an Aaron Rodgers leading target. The question is, now you have offensive philosophy. How does that work in Pittsburgh? Aaron Rodgers is another year older. We saw that his trigger is just a tick slower, maybe than what we've seen in years past. So there is in my mind, there's a ton of boomer bust potential here with DK Metcalf and what we're going to get out of him. So if you believe the boom and you think that we're going to be looking at Aaron Rodgers' new best friend, then this is your guy. Like, you'll get tremendous value out of him. Instead of 22, he'll finish wide receiver 12 and, help really carry your team forward as you pair him with, one of the upper echelon wide receivers that you drafted in the first or second round. Otherwise, fade him and be willing to at least potentially be wrong, right? And that's just kind of how it is. So I am completely torn on DK Metcalf. I like him for best ball. I struggle in redraft because I just can't make up my mind if I want to be safe or if I want to take that gamble on him in particular. But if I take DK here, I'm probably really looking at like a Jacoby Myers, to go back to the beginning of the show, a guy who is really consistent and who can kind of balance out the down weeks for DK here a little bit.
Yeah, this is one that I'm also kind of back and forth on as well, right? One, there's kind of that Arthur Smith element there as well, right? Which we've seen that kind of play out in several different kind of scenarios that early, when Arthur Smith was still with Tennessee, AJ Brown, DK's former college teammates, had very good weeks, very good seasons down there, playing off the pass action and being able to rock and roll that. And there's maybe that potential to see that come to play here. There's also the the thought that, right, like Drake London didn't have a very good time there with that Arthur Smith offense, right? We didn't see George Pickens really stand out last year. What is this run heavy scheme that we'll likely see out of Arthur Smith really look like, and what kind of passing volume and target share will DK get, right? Like, is this one of those that we can see him return to north of 130 targets? Or is this a deal that we see another kind of 110 to 120 and another 70 to 80 receptions and 1,100 yards, right? Like, this is one of those that the ceiling certainly could be there, and the narrative could be spun that way to do that. But there's also an equally good or equally good outcome that we see DK Metcalf return a wide receiver 3, very back end wide receiver 2 type of output. So the range of outcomes certainly introduces that risk on this one. And this is a little bit of a buyer beware for me on that thought. Any other thoughts on DK Metcalf?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about DJ Moore. And DJ Moore last year, 98 receptions, 140 targets, 966 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Thoughts on DJ Moore?
Bit of a down year last year. I think part of that was getting used to the rookie quarterback. I think part of that was sharing some of those targets with Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen and, with what the Bears are doing. I think DJ Moore, he's not as shifty as Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think he could fill some of those same roles. He played a lot of slot in Carolina. So that does help him here a little bit. He does see off coverage. Last year, really what kind of cemented the fact was his with his yards being down 9.9 per catch, right? Like, it's just not quite what we've seen out of DJ Moore. I think we see a rebound of that. I think we see that increase as Ben Johnson gets in there, as Caleb Williams gets more comfortable. Yes, there's more targets, which I kind of made me pause on Roma Dunze, but I did also say that if there's a Bears guy that I'm going after, I think it's DJ Moore. I think this is a very safe wide receiver too. I think there's some upside here to possibly get up into like wide receiver, 13, 14 and kind of go from there. So he's a guy that I'm definitely keeping an eye on in redraft leagues and seeing what I can make work from it.
Yeah. DJ Moore is a guy that I really like this year. I do think that we see the bounce back happen, right? This is a guy, and as you mentioned, he's not necessarily maybe as shifty as Amon-Ra, but this is a guy that is a one-touch guy when it comes to the football, right? If you can get the ball in his hands, he can take it to the house from anywhere on the field. I do think that we see an uptick on this one. As far as this production goes, one, I think Ben Johnson will do some things to help scheme this, and one, help develop Caleb Williams. Two, be able to scheme DJ Moore open and have more downfield opportunities for him, to the point where we see the while he set career high in receptions, it was one of the lowest outputs that he'd had in his entire career, and the first year that he'd fallen below 10 yards of reception. So I think that we can see that bounce back to the point where, we were seeing him return that, 12 to 13 yards of reception in this scenario. I think that we're going to see him right around 100, right around 100 receptions again this year, and 6-7 touchdowns. So I do think that DJ Moore is in for a very good year, and not going to surprise me if I look up at the end of the season and I see a 95 to 100 receptions, 1,200 to 1,300 yards, and 6-7 touchdowns. So I think that DJ Moore is in for a very good season and a very good bounce back. And I think that there is some tremendous value baked into his ADP here. Any other thoughts on DJ Moore?
No, I don't believe so.
All righty. Well, that's going to take us down to the end of it. And next week we'll hit up the wide receivers 20 through 1 and kind of round that out. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Right. We're getting a little bit closer here, get through the wide receivers, and then we continue to move on. But we're here. So as drafts come up, feel free to hit us up. Let us know what you're kind of thinking. If you have any questions about your draft upcoming. Other than that, we'll catch everybody next Tuesday.
Right. And I will wrap that up, and then it's on into the, so we'll wrap up the kind of the ADP and our talk here on individual players. And then we're going to really start diving into the actual draft strategies, get into a lot more mocks. And, those are some of my favorite episodes throughout the year, like really getting down to that draft season and really start solidifying what that looks like as far as, how draft strategies may look and work, and potentially drafting from certain positions and all of that. So cannot wait for some of those. And as you've already mentioned, we'll be back next Tuesday to rock it through the last of the individual player breakdowns, and looking forward to that. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. Alex was here earlier and had the early day, so he's already out, but we'll catch him again next week. And I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.